Setting up the meeting. All right. I think we made it. Everyone knows that I'm not the most tech savvy person, so I always feel a little bit nervous when I push the button, and I'm never sure when it goes. Hello, good afternoon. It is a Tuesday. Normally we're joining you on Thursday, but I do have to thank David so much for joining us today, since I was unavailable on this Thursday. So everyone, happy Tuesday. It is my great pleasure to welcome David Greenfield, who's going to be joining us. I was going to say from SOENECS, but you have so many different titles and things going on. So I'll just say from the circular economy world. I think that might be a better way to put it.
SOENECS is good. Circular economy. Okay. Hi, Caitlin. It's lovely to see you.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining us, David. I have to say, it's one of the things I always talk about at the beginning of these calls is the weather. And, obviously climate is long-term weather patterns. So it's been interesting to see how the weather changes every week when we're doing this. And I was just telling you, I'm in North Carolina right now, and it's 18 degrees and sunny, and it's December. The daffodils are coming out. It's a little scary. So, yeah, a little nerve-wracking. It's only 4 months early, but that's fine, right?
It's mad. I'm in Brighton in the UK. And it's drizzling, so typical English weather, but it is about 13 degrees, and some of the magnolia buds are popping out already as well. So yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, the flowers are turned on their heads as well as the bugs, and we are as well. But yeah. Anyway, well, obviously we're here to talk about all of the positive things that are going on so we can help mitigate this climate change impact. Yeah. So we met, and this is so funny. We were just chatting, and apparently we met, what, 2 years ago?
I think it's probably three years ago that we met, but we haven't spoken for 2 years.
So. Oh my goodness, that's unbelievable. Well, we originally met at the Waste Build conference, which you initiated, and was one of, really early on in my Keep Culture days, and incredibly inspiring in terms of just seeing how circularity can be applied to more than just abstract ideas of systems development. So, but I'd love to hear, I know we have a lot of ground to cover because you have so many amazing projects going on,
yes.
But I'd love to hear a little bit about how did you get into this idea of circularity, and where did the idea for Waste Build and doing a conference come from? And then I'd love to delve into some of your more current projects, but maybe we can start out there.
No, fine. Okay. So how did I get into circularity? That in itself is a relatively long-winded answer, but I'll go with the short answer, which is essentially I did my degree in renewable energy and geography back in the 90s, last millennium, and have always had an interest in the environment, pretty much as a geographer. And I then fell into waste management. And when I say fell in, literally I ended up working for a local authority on a project which I had absolutely no clue about the implications of it. So I got brought in, it's quite a funny story. I needed some cash while I was doing my master's on waste. So I ended up working for the local authority as a cycle proficiency officer. So I don't know whether you have those in the US or in other parts of Europe, but essentially I was teaching young kids how to ride a bicycle. At their school.
In the Netherlands, we have.
Yeah. And the team that I went to work for were actually part of the environment team. I didn't know any of this. I was just joining them because I needed some cash. And it turned out that my managers had already got a plan for me, that they were going to make me the recycling officer. And then they put me forward to become a technical advisor on this big contract, which I had no clue about. Which was only worth £1 billion, and the biggest project that the councils had done for over half a century. And my learning curve was extensive. It was inverted. And after 4 years, I ended up being essentially the go-to on all of the technical elements to do with waste management. Mm-hmm. That then led me into becoming. I was asked to come and work regionally across the UK and then nationally. on waste management and climate change back in 2005, 2006. So
early days.
Yeah, very early days,
Cool.
before the concept of circular economy had even been coined.
Yeah.
So yes, I ended up running regional programs. We were looking at heat sinks across the southeast of England, looking at mitigation and adaptation. We even had conversations with electric car companies back in 2007 around how they needed to stop creating ridiculous plugs and actually standardize, because they were all coming up with different plugs, and it was like, nobody's ever going to use this. So as part of that, I ended up working at quite a strategic national level, and heard about the concept of the circular economy pretty much after Dame Ellen MacArthur had come forward with her foundation, and got very, very hooked on it very, very quickly. And we ended up running our first project on circular economy in 2011. So literally about a year after it had been launched, and have been getting involved in it ever since. And
in every way, you've got your fingers in all the pies, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It is in every way. And I could be accused of being a waste specialist, but for me, circular economy is a systems thinking approach. And it doesn't matter what topic you're talking about, you can still use the same systems thinking approach. I'm doing projects currently on construction, on waste management, on plastics, on fashion, just to name a few. And we're using the same systems concept. We're not adapting it for different technologies, because it's relatively simple from that perspective. So that's you're going to get a lot of long-winded answers. I apologize.
That's I'm more than happy. Everyone gets to hear me talk all the time. They're not here to hear me, so I'm very happy for that. But I love what you were saying about, it's a systems approach and it's applicable everywhere. And I think that that's something that's so incredibly important. When I, as a cultural professional, when I first heard the word circular economy, I thought, okay, well, that's something for Wall Street, or, I don't really know what that means. How does that apply to me? But it not only applies integrally to my work as a cultural professional, but it applies to every single aspect of my life. Yeah. And I think that for me was what was so inspiring about learning more about circular economy and figuring out how to bring that to the cultural sector, because it really is such a simplistic concept that can be expanded out exponentially to solve almost any problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to use the phrase next life thinking a lot.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Tell me more about that.
Well, very simply, and for those of you that don't know what circular economy is, essentially we live in a linear economy, or a partly linear economy, where we take stuff out of the ground, we make stuff with it, we then consume it, and then more often than not, it gets thrown away or it gets recycled. Circular economy is about looking at the life cycle of those materials and trying to extend them for as long as possible, get them as used efficiently as possible, and then at the end of their service life, then look for opportunities to maximize the value of that. So if that's reuse, if that's recycling, if that's remanufacturing, so that we're not actually putting this pressure on always needing virgin raw materials. And that's very much where the circular economy is coming from. But it's doing so in a way that's looking at business models. So what different business models can be used to create a circular economy? Some of them are relatively simple, like leasing things from a manufacturer, so those materials go back to the manufacturer at the end of life so they can then be remanufactured. Some of them are more complicated, like leasing your lighting. So rather than buying a lamp,
service.
Yeah, exactly. Products as a service. There's so many different concepts in this, but fundamentally it's about respecting the materials that we use on a day-to-day basis, both technical materials, whether it's the sort of things that we're talking on a laptop and materials that are contained within this, but also our agricultural and natural systems as well. We need to think about both of those in parallel.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think that it's amazing to see how broad the applications are. And as I mentioned, we met at Waste Build, which was primarily about construction.
It was indeed.
Yeah,
I've
and
avoided that question completely. Shall I address that one that you asked me?
no, it's totally fine. I have a feeling we're going to go off on a lot of different tangents
Yeah,
here, but
exactly.
everything is so interesting. But yeah, I mean, and you know, I know that you were there with many different hats on, and I remember the first time we were chatting, and you were telling me about all of the projects you were doing, including, you know, the Circular Economy Club and SOENECS, and so I'm excited to delve into all of that
Yeah,
as well,
okay.
as well as some of your newer ventures, which
Oh, we've been playing around with some really interesting stuff this year, particularly around behavior change, which is absolutely one of the key aspects. Let's go back to 2019 and waste build. I was the Compare chair for 2 days at a new conference in Amsterdam, which has been set up by a very good colleague of mine, Fraser Stokes, and I worked with him to set it up. And that was really trying to bring the concept of circular to the built environment. And there's been quite a lot of work done on that over the last few years. One of the reasons why I got involved is, well, for 2 reasons. One, I'm the chair of the Institution of Civil Engineers Resource Management Panel. So that's an expert panel based in London with experts in the built environment, trying to look at how we can incorporate circular into the built environment. And I've had that role for a number of years. But also, you've mentioned the Circular Economy Club. I'm the external affairs lead for the Circular Economy Club and the Circular Economy Institute, which are sister organisations. And so have been known to talk about circular economy quite a bit across different fields. And I'm also writing a book for the Institute of Civil Engineers.
Of course you are.
It's a bit delayed. It's a bit delayed. Don't tell anybody, but it's a bit delayed.
I'm also writing a book, which is like 1.5 years behind. So I'm sorry to all my authors. You guys are amazing. I'll get there. I promise.
I can beat you. I'm on 2.5 years behind.
Okay. You make me look good.
But yeah, I think the interesting thing is that what we've seen over the last couple of years, particularly since lockdown and particularly since in the UK, there was a really powerful documentary by David Attenborough that really caught the public's consciousness on plastics. And 2018, 2019, there was a huge upswell in people really starting to understand that we can't be as wasteful as we have done. We started to needing to look at what we consume and how we consume it and move away from single-use plastics, straw bans, plastic bag bans, all of these things, which many of us have been talking about for 15 years, but the public finally got it. And then we had COVID, which helped in one case, but actually pushed us backwards because a lot of single-use plastics. But then we've also got the Greta effect, which really got the youth conscious of this topic. And what we've seen, I think, over the last couple of years is there's all of that groundswell of consciousness about the impact that we have on the environment is now starting to come through to some of the corporates and to some of the other bodies that are out there. So we're starting to see legislation also coming in. So extended producer responsibility in the UK is really starting to change the mindset of some of the big corporates. And this is where circular economy as a concept becomes a solution for trying to deliver climate change. So it's we're at a very, very delicate but good point in terms of using circular economy as a weapon in the climate change war, which we are in. We're in a war. We have to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it really is inspiring, at least certainly in my field. I've also noticed this, and you're talking, a little bit more about like the business sectors and things like that. But also, I come from the cultural sector, which a lot of people wouldn't think about, environmental impact in the cultural sector, but it's huge. And I agree with you. Like we're set at such a tipping point right now, because this has been something that a few people have talked about kind of over the last 15, 20 years. And then all of a sudden everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's a hot topic, it's part of every conference that is going on. I'm getting more, requests for speeches than ever, which I love. So I'm happy about
Yeah.
that. But it's really exciting to see that there's this interest and there's this understanding. And I wanted to go back to what you were talking about. You just mentioned quickly about behavior change.
Mm,
And you also talked a little bit about the Circular Economy Institute. And I think this is really interesting because one of the things I've noticed, particularly in the cultural sector and in my day-to-day job, is that there's this kind of dichotomy of trying to motivate people and influence and inspire behavior change, but at the same time the education has to come first. So I'd love to explore a little bit with you about your perspective on that.
yeah, no, absolutely. So it's fundamentally, when I talk about circular economy, there's still a lot of people go, I don't understand it. What is it? Why are you discussing this? So there's normally an element of having to introduce somebody to the topic. And once they understand the topic, they then go, okay, yeah, right, okay, I get that. I already do some of that. Some of it might well be products as a service. I'm leasing my mobile phone rather than buying it, for example.
Nice.
And taking some of those simplistic examples and saying, actually, this isn't a new concept. It's just a new way of thinking about what you do. And then, yes, there are going to have to be different changes. So the Circular Economy Institute was set up off the back of the Circular Economy clubs. So across the world, there are 280 circular economy clubs, which are run by volunteers in cities across the world.
Wow.
With a view to creating a community in those cities of people that are interested in circular economy or
Amazing.
actively participating in circular economy. And it's non-topic specific. So I run the London club as well, amongst many of my other roles.
Of course.
Of course
You do.
And we've got fashion designers in there. We've got architects. We've got governments, civil servants. We've got procurers. We've got entrepreneurs. Lots of entrepreneurs actually in the circular economy, and that's a really nice network of people. So that's really helpful in terms of spreading the word, but that's converting the converted to become more
preaching to the choir a bit.
Exactly. So what we decided to do with the Circular Economy Institute was offer some basic level training that could be at a global level. So we could say, actually, this is the sort of information you require, whether you're in Gambia or Greenland. And so we put together a certificate that was an online training course that was put together by a range of different experts to be essentially a self-taught online scheme. And it goes through very practically 4 different modules, with the second module having something like 21 units in it. But it would take you through the individual elements of what the circular economy is, and it would give you the theory, an activity, and then a little quiz. And you go through each of those stages, and if you get a 70% pass mark, you're then going to get your certificate of circular economy. That went down really well with a lot of people, and they were saying, oh, can we have something a bit more detailed? So we then expanded that one into a more detailed professional certificate, which went into individual topics. So we've got construction, we've got fashion, we've got electronics, for example. We haven't got culture yet, but you know, and
we may have to have a follow-up conversation.
We might have to have a follow-up about that. And the original certificate we also translated into Spanish, so it's Spanish as well as English. And then we've also created an instructor's level as well, because there's a lot of us that know a lot about circular economy, but there's not enough of us to tell everybody. So we need to get a much larger range of people up to the same level of knowledge to then be able to spread that knowledge, which is why we want to get people becoming professional certificates and then instructors certificates as well. But it's all designed to be self-learning, and we then also do actually offer complimentary workshops with them. So I've taken 10 officers from one organization. They've done each module online themselves, then we brought them all together and then looked at what they've learned, helped embed that knowledge within them, but
Hmm.
empower them to use that in their day job. And
Hmm.
that's where the
Oh,
behavior change comes in, because
mhm.
you can be very knowledgeable, but if you don't know how to use that knowledge, it becomes redundant.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
giving an element of confidence to somebody that might have read something for 5 or 6 hours, they've got the concept, but what does that mean to me in my day job?
Mhm.
That's where you start to build in behavior change and start to give people the confidence to explore what they've learned in actually putting into practice. And we've had some really wonderful, simple changes, like planning officers taking this on board and then literally rewriting a planning policy to include circular economy principles. And we've had the same with a housing officer down in Brighton Hove, who came to one of our workshops and then changed the specification of homes he was procuring at the time. So yes, empowerment and behavior change are very key things, but to get the general population embracing this, we have to start thinking about the practicalities of what it means to people on a day-to-day life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, it's this is a little bit similar to the kind of the structure we have at Key Futures with this almost train the trainers
Yeah,
concept. It's empowering the people who are passionate about it and, actively seeking to, get the knowledge and then make the behavior changes, and then that creates a ripple effect. I mean, this procurement officer who went down and changed that's not just him changing that one, the way that he does business, but then it changes the conversations with his colleagues. It changes the
absolutely.
entire structure of the whole business, and
Yeah.
it ripples out to, the people that he's not only his day-to-day colleagues, but also the people he's working with in order to make those procurements and
And
sales. And yeah, it's
and
exciting.
probably most importantly, the supply chain, because
Yes.
if the suppliers are starting to see specifications that are coming out with the concept of circular economy, so the built
Mhm.
environment's a really exciting place for this at the moment. You've got things like the Royal Institution of British Architects creating a 2030 climate challenge,
Oh,
which has got a
cool.
number of targets for architects to work to. There's
Oh,
then
very
something
cool.
called the UK Green Building Council circular
Mhm.
economy targets. Then you've got something called the LETI environmental targets as well. We've incorporated all of those into a roadmap for one authority, so
Amazing.
that suppliers can actually start seeing, okay, these are the things that we're going to be measured against, and therefore we've got to get our house in order
Mhm.
to be able to win some of these contracts. And absolutely, it's a ripple effect, hopefully a snowball effect as well. And I say about big business, there's some really large businesses that are doing this really stealthily without much publicity. And
Oh.
I'll give you a really simple example, which I'm not being paid by them. I haven't got one of their cars. I might have done in the past, but I just love the concept of, you've got a multinational like BMW,
Mhm.
who you wouldn't associate with circular to begin with. Well, maybe their badge, but they've been exploring circular economy for the last few years,
Mhm.
but in a very structured, let's see what this means for the business perspective.
Okay.
And they've been looking at it from raw materials concept and going,
Mhm.
okay, we're a huge consumer of raw materials.
Mm.
All of the materials that go into the manufacture of a car, massive carbon footprint.
Huge.
They invited me through the Circular Economy Club to go and visit their concept car prior to COP26.
Mhm.
Now, I'm a bit of a car geek, so I was like, yes, of course, absolutely. I don't care what it is. I don't even know what it looks like. Fine, sign me up. So I went up to London, had a look at it, and I was blown away about their circular economy thinking. Their concept car had been made with 5 materials. Exactly
Five. Oh my
5.
goodness.
Now, it wasn't roadworthy. It didn't have brakes and it didn't
Oh,
have the electric engine in, but it's a concept car.
yeah.
And more importantly, the 5 materials that they were used were all secondary raw materials.
Oh my
So
gosh, that's incredible.
exactly. So they had secondary glass, secondary raw material glass. They had secondary raw material aluminium, a large amount of plastics that were secondary, textiles, exactly the same. And then they went through, there was only 7 of us, including the editor of the Financial Times transport sector. And they've going through this, and they put this innocuous slide up and said, yeah, we've adopted this approach across our business now, which is called secondary first. And then they went on to explain that little concept, which was essentially, when we're building something, our first thought is it has to be secondary raw materials.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And
if we
can't find the secondary raw materials, we have to justify why we can't before we then use virgin raw materials.
It's amazing.
And if you think of that as someone as big as BMW,
yeah,
the impact that's going to have on reducing climate change is massive.
Huge. Absolutely.
Whereas
huge.
Many of us are talking about taking out plastic straws. The scale of the impact, I think, this is what we want from big corporates, to start getting that mindset and go, okay, let's look at this at a strategic level. And then behavior change doesn't come into it for the consumer, because most of them won't
buying
know.
a BMW.
Exactly.
You just don't know that it's, all circular and and secondhand.
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And I think there's kind of, it's interesting because one of the things I've noticed, of course, with sustainability is that you can't be waiting for something to happen. It has to come from everybody. And so, the consumer may say, well, we don't have the option from the supplier, but the supplier isn't going to change unless the consumer asks for it. So it's this kind of, who needs to ask the question? And the answer is we all do. We all need to be asking this question. We all need to be seeing, okay, what, how can we do better? How can we supply better? But how can we demand better as well? And so it's this kind of, who came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, both at the same time. Thank you very much. And exactly. But I think it's so interesting, and this is actually a really nice segue, because we were talking a little bit earlier about tech and the waste from electronic materials. And I had a meeting this morning that I was late to because my computer is 6 years old and it is starting to, rebel against me and the 7,000 tabs that I have open, which I know is not very sustainable, but we're working on it. And there's just, it's such an unbelievably problematic area is the amount of electronic waste that we produce, and everyone needs the newest and latest cell phone, and their own is because they're not designed in a circular way. They're designed to die after 5 years.
Exactly.
Max. So I know that you have this new program you're working with, this new business, Tech Trade. So
Tech Take Back.
Apologies. Thank you.
No.
So tell me a little bit about it.
Okay. So that's a relatively simple proposition. So my background, as I said, was local government. I ended up working for a year at a IT data erasure and recycling company. And we actually introduced circular economy back in 2013 to here. But what we were doing, we were taking 700 or 800 PCs or laptops from a corporate, data erasing them, refurbishing them, and then selling them. And that was a good business model. Mm-hmm. My background in local government and waste management was going, well, we've got householders with thousands of items. Can we not take those? And the team were going, no, too complicated, too difficult. We'll just get random numbers of weird items that we don't want to touch, and it will just screw up the whole system. So 3 years later, I decided to take that on with a couple of partners and go, okay, let's see what we can do with this. And we set up a little pop-up shop in Brighton, in a cafe on a wet January morning, and went out to one of our networks. So I work very closely. I'm the director of Freegal, which is an online platform where you share stuff you don't want for free.
Oh, cool.
Very similar to FreeCycle. And we went out to the community in Brighton and asked people to bring down their unused, unwanted tech. We'd data erase it for free for them and try and give it a second life. We had a quarter of a ton of material in one morning from a coffee shop. I was like, oh, okay. there's something here.
Quarter of a ton. Holy mackerel.
Yeah, exactly. Including somebody that came down with 14 hard drives that they've been hoarding for 12 years and going, I haven't found anywhere where I can safely reuse these items. I don't want to throw them away. I want them reused. So we then won a bit of a small grant and ran 5 subsequent pop-up shops across Brighton and Hove across 22 days in different periods of time and collected 9 tons of electronics. Got a small proportion of those reused, but there was a bit of momentum building, so we went out for another grant and linked up with a app provider called the ZeroNet, and we put the proposal forward that we would create a doorstep collection for residents of Brighton Hove that could download the app and actually essentially do a reverse Amazon. So
I love that.
Yeah,
I love reverse Amazon. That's my new favorite thing. Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. So
let's get rid of stuff. Thank you.
Exactly. And that's exactly what you can do. So you go onto the app and there's a menu of stuff that you want to give us. So you can go into your PCs, you can go into your laptops, you can go into your microwaves, small kitchen appliances, hoovers. And then we'll ask you to say what's your collection time preference. Whole load of other things, and then we'll offer you a collection slot, and we'll say, right, we're going to be here Thursday between 9:30 and 12:30. Does that work for you? If yes, great. If not, we'll offer you another collection slot. So we launched that in November 2020, and our first year anniversary saw us collecting 27,000 electrical items from 2,500 households.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How impactful is that? That's incredible.
Well, it is. It's also a logistics nightmare, but
you don't need to worry about that. Logistics come later.
But the really nice thing is that a lot of this stuff is actually reusable. So we've actually now got 5,500 of these items back out to the community through local charities. We've got 270 laptops to school children and homeless families. We've even started giving out microwaves and vacuum cleaners and TVs to families that can't afford them. So that's been going really well. And then we've disassembled 6,500 items as well for their raw materials. So a lot of steel, a lot of aluminium, and the printed circuit boards going off to get some of the rare earth metals that are in there. So, and
we have a shortage of those right now.
Indeed, we do.
Very useful. Very useful.
Indeed, we do. So yes.
I think this is amazing, like how applicable this is to our everyday lives. Because as you know, I know that circuit boards and chips are in massive shortage right now. In the United States, you can't buy a car because they're on back order for 2 years because we just don't have enough materials. And we're starting to see that, guess what, United World, we are running out of raw materials.
Exactly.
And so we need to start looking at what we've already used and figuring out how to reuse that rather than extracting new. So I think.
So can I give you another new term that you're going to love? Hopefully, well, you might not love it. You might hate it.
Of course, I will.
Essentially, what you're describing and what we're doing is urban mining. So,
urban mining. I've heard of that, but now I understand what it means. Urban mining. I'm writing this down.
And then a very good colleague of mine has taken that to another level and coined the phrase "mining the Anthropocene."
Oh wow, so that's powerful.
Yeah. So Duncan Baker. We've got Duncan Baker Brown in my little library. It's not as impressive as yours, but Duncan Baker Brown, who wrote the book, The Reuse Atlas, has really looked at the built environment and how you can reuse buildings rather than knocking them down. And mining the Anthropocene, urban mining, that's amazing. Industrial symbiosis as well is another term.
I love it. Well, Duncan was actually at the Waste Build event.
He was indeed.
I remember meeting him there. Absolutely. Yes. It all comes full circular.
Yes, it does. It does indeed.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Well, I mean, it's so inspiring to see how many opportunities. And I think, one of the things that I always try to impart on our Key Futures participants and the Key Culture community at large is how applicable circularity can be to everything. And I think
Absolutely.
that, our chat today has really demonstrated that in so many ways. And, I always am just so blown away at the a million and a half things that you're doing. But of course, I guess if they're all kind of overlapping because they're all part of the circular economy, then that complementary aspect makes it feasible. So that's
Indeed it
really
does.
amazing. Yeah.
Indeed it does.
Yeah, that's amazing because you also have SOENECS, which is you're the managing director, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so
indeed.
very quickly, I know we only have a couple of minutes here, but I'd love to chat a little bit about what you're doing there.
Okay, so just in the last 12 months, to give you an example, and this is quite insane, we've helped 2 local authorities write their circular economy route maps. So how to
Cool.
embed circular economy within a local government, particularly with a focus on them procuring circular solutions and using their
Nice.
planning functions to get circular buildings in particular created. We've helped another authority create a supplementary planning document that helps designers understand, or constructors understand, how you have to incorporate circular thinking into new builds so that the users can actually have the right systems in place to be able to recycle and reuse things.
Amazing.
But then we've also done some research on invisible ocean pollutants. So here's one for you.
Okay.
28 to 34% of ocean plastics come from our vehicle tires.
What?
Yep.
Come from the tires of the cars? And
Yep.
what about bike tires?
Yeah, bike tires, any tires. So and the reason why that is essentially, if you take a normal car tire, they'll last 10, 15,000 miles.
Yeah.
What happens is you've got friction, and every time you drive your car tire, there's going to be a little element of the tire dust being created.
Right.
On average, each tire is 1 kilogram less at the end of its life than it was at the beginning. And you can see that on Formula One quite easily. But
yes.
that dust gets washed onto the road, and then when it rains, that gets washed into the drains. In many cases, those drains go straight into the rivers.
Right.
So, and then they're suspended loads straight into the oceans.
Now, but aren't tires made from rubber? Like, isn't that
24% of a tire is rubber. The other
what? I thought tires were made of rubber.
They have got an element, and the tree that the rubber comes from is also a climate at risk tree, so the hevea tree.
God. So it's not sustainable anyway.
It's not sustainable, albeit that we are starting to see manufacturers now looking at dandelions as alternatives to trees. That could be a completely different thing. But you're right. I'm going to have to go in a minute because I've just realized I've got to launch a charity meeting that I'm starting in a few minutes as well. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we'll wrap up here, but I want to hear more about these dandelions, but I do want to say, like, because I know what you do at SOENECS is so incredibly important. And I have to say that is something that the cultural sector can really benefit and learn from, because these models are so applicable to museums. And so I'm museums, I'm looking at you guys right now, and museum associations. Let's model ourselves, look outside the sector and get some influence here. So, well, David, I wanted to thank you so much. This has been so inspiring. And I do want to ask you one more question before I let you go launch your charity event. I know you're crazy busy. So once again, I'm so grateful for you for taking the time to share all of your amazing projects and brilliance and inspiration with us. But I always ask everyone at the end of our interviews, if there is one thing that you can give advice to, a tip or any suggestion on how our audience can take an action to be more sustainable today, what would it be?
I'll put it into one sentence.
Okay.
Think about what you need rather than what you want.
I think, okay. Especially with Christmas coming up, I think that
absolutely
is a very, very important thing.
And that you talked about your computers. You may want to upgrade your computer because that would be the simple thing to do. But actually, it might be just as easy to spend a bit of time cleaning up your hard drive, making sure you've got all of the correct settings on it, and maybe buying an external hard drive, for example.
You know, I actually did buy one. It's right here. And that's actually was going to be my Christmas project, was just taking everything and dumping it on the hard drive and basically refurbishing my computer rather than going and buying a refurbished one.
Exactly. And right. I've quoted this statistic already about 3 times today. Cars are a very good example as well. Do you need a car or do you want a car? Most 95% of the time, a car is sitting idle. Wow. Because it's parked up. It's parked up. The resources that went into that 2 tons of material, and the supply chain of materials that created that 2 tons, sit around for 95% of the time doing nothing. It's a very, very poor use of materials. Even though I'm a petrol head now converted to an electric head, but there we are.
Well, I do have to say, you know, I've not owned a car in 11 years, but you know, the car sharing stuff, especially in Europe, is just taking off. So I'm excited to hear more about that. Well, anyway, I know you have to run, but thank you so much, David. This has been such a pleasure, and really, really excited to continue our conversations. I know we talked before, so we have some follow-up that we'll be exploring together, but it's a huge pleasure to see you, and congratulations on all of the amazing things you're doing and the huge impact you're having. So really excited to continue these conversations and hear more of your amazing successes.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much. And it's been great speaking to you. Let's not leave it 2 years next time.
Oh my gosh, yes, please. We'll be in touch much sooner. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, David. Have a great one. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week.